Hi, I'm Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mole Hole, to the Gamekeeper studio, and we've kind of, again, it's been refurbished, and it's nice in here.
Mm-hmm. It is a lot nicer than it was, that's for sure.
If we could just get a little heat in here now, that'd be the thing.
It's 24 degrees this morning.
It was cold.
You know what? If I was a turkey, I would have gobbled though.
Mm-hmm.
It had that feel.
One of those mornings.
It had that feel. I mean, it just did. I walked outside and hell, I gobbled.
You know, yesterday I was driving to work and I saw something I've never seen here. There were some snow geese in a pasture on the way to. And then as I got closer to town, a V of Canada geese came over, and there were a couple of snow geese in there with them.
You know how it is. Waterfowl season's over with. Here they come.
Have you ever seen any snow geese around here? I mean, I hear them.
I've actually heard a lot. I heard snow geese at my house, which is near the waterway, in October.
Well, we hear them frequently, but you never see a big group of them in a field.
You can catch them up there in the curve between here and Oklahoma. Y'all know where I'm talking about. And that seems like there's a natural flyway there where I've seen a lot of geese in the fields there.
It's different than driving through the Mississippi Delta and just seeing them all over the place.
Right. Have you ever eaten a snow goose?
I have.
Are they about like eating?
I can't say much about it. You know, one morning we just absolutely tore them up, and I was so fired up. You know, I'm a meathead, so I was thinking about all the goose I was going to be eating for the next few years.
Yeah.
Oof.
And then it wasn't that exciting.
It wasn't as exciting. We had a lot of stews. You know,
I've had it, and I thought it was great.
Now, I've had it properly done. I don't know if I've had snow goose properly done.
We used the plucking machine at the hunting camp and plucked them all out and covered them in some kind of seasoned salt and cooked them in a smoker. They were fabulous.
Now, I have had smoked goose is good, but I wasn't smart enough to try to smoke mine.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of all this good food, we've got these biscuits, and Jason Kline, our producer, brought in some homemade sorghum.
Homemade syrup. Is this made from cane?
Yeah, sugar cane.
Sugar cane.
So not the sorghum, but the sugar cane.
Yeah, sugar cane.
I tell you what, it's got a natural taste to it. It's really good.
It's super sweet, and Mac noticed that it's not as thick as it looks. It's perfect consistency.
Yeah. It's really good. It's really good.
It's way better than that dark molasses. That's just a little too much.
So how many pieces of cane does it take to make that bottle right there, to make that quart jar, do you think?
Probably 30, maybe.
30 pieces of cane.
Yeah. It condenses down a lot.
Yeah, and then you reduce it, don't you?
Yeah.
So you put it on the heat and then let it reduce. So y'all spend all morning smashing cane?
Yeah, we start about probably 7:30 in the morning and don't get done juicing to probably 10:30. And then at
night or the 3 hours later?
3 hours later.
Oh, that ain't too bad.
And then the most of the time is the cooking. The cooking takes all day.
Yeah.
And you've got this big old cauldron that you put it in, and
it's my uncle. It's a homemade cooker that he made.
That's
like
very
a big, huge aluminum pan.
That's awesome.
And do y'all do it with a propane stove or a wood burn stove? Propane stove. Outside. Everybody gathers around the fire and watches it bubble.
Yep.
Man, I'd probably have a hangover the next day if that was my job.
Well, you should take some pictures and then write down the recipe, and then in a future
this is a secret family recipe. Don't let the secret out.
Well, I was just trying to help our listeners. If there
is a secret ingredient that goes in there,
and we're not going to talk about it.
Oregano.
On the jar. On the jar, it has the letters CI.
Hickory CI.
Hickory is where the town he's from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say what CI stands for?
Yeah.
What is it?
Cleveland Ingenuity.
Hey, Cleveland House.
Pass that. Let me put a little bit more over here.
Little dab.
So while we're having this delicious syrup, there's a jar that looks like a biology experiment that went bad that Lanny brought in here.
I'm excited about this.
What is this?
This is canned deer meat. Canned by our Biologics' very own Christy Buckner.
Okay. Well, look, I have a lot of faith in her. But when I look at this, it kind of looks like when you go in the country store and they got a jar of pig brains or pig's feet.
Quail eggs, you eat them all the time.
It doesn't look like quail eggs. This is just different looking.
It looks like Alpo, but it tastes like pot roast.
Yeah. So Dudley's way more familiar with this than I am, so he can go into the intricacies of it. But, for me, it just, makes sense to be able to preserve meat in a way other than refrigerating. Now, I've never done it. My freezers are one of my biggest prides in my life. And if they were to go out, I would be in depression. So
my trick, if, this year would be an exception because I didn't get enough deer in the freezer. But if you have leftover deer, you can it.
Yeah.
And it works great.
So you're actually cooking it in the can when you're pressure canning it.
Yeah. You use a big old pressure canner. Not like water boil method, like if you're making jelly.
Yeah.
It's got to have the pressure and the right amount of time. There's USDA recommendations on exactly how to do it.
Because you could hurt yourself.
Yeah. Some people that think they can can something by putting it in their oven and crazy things like that, you can get botulism and die.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
But if you follow
we're trying to live the best life out here. We ain't trying to die with the best life.
If you follow the procedures, it's perfectly safe. I mean, it's no different than getting something canned from the grocery store.
So how long will that be shelf stable if I put it down in low light in a very...
I think the book will tell you 1 year, but 4 to 5 years it works great.
Mm-hmm.
Botulism.
Never had that, but I do not want it.
Yeah.
You'll hear about it in like incredibly rural areas where people don't really go by the book; they go by traditions.
Right.
And even then, it's very rare.
It's just needs of that. So Christy has been with Biologic a long time. She kind of keeps the books and
keeps everybody in order
for down here. And then she killed a deer this year.
Yeah, I think that's it right there in that jar.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. Her husband hunts all the time, but I was real proud of her. She would send pictures. She went a half a dozen times.
Yeah, they're into it, and it's interesting. I love talking to people about what they do, and that's how this jarred deer meat got here. Because I was like, "What are you doing? Are you grinding, putting up?" She actually goes more of the ready to eat method than I do. So I put up in portion sizes, and then I have to cook. When I'm ready to tell. Well, she'll take and grinds up the majority of her deer and goes ahead and browns the meat and then would vacuum seal and freeze it. And then this, she's canning the whole muscle cuts and putting those up. And so she'll take that and, make deer meat over gravy or something like that. Just like Dudley's saying. I mean, you've had canned roast beef before, hadn't you?
I think so.
Yeah. It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
Oscar Mayer.
And she did it in a quart. I like doing it in little jelly jars, which I think is technically a half pint. And you can have yourself a tailgate meal
right
midday at the hunting camp.
Well, I mean, for a while you were eating them around here. You canned up a bunch a couple of years ago, and at lunch you'd be walking around with a little mason jar eating out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dudley does some bizarre stuff around here at lunch.
I wouldn't call that bizarre. I think you're bizarre.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, a man can only eat so many Hardee's cheeseburgers
without cheese.
Without cheese. Let me get it. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, when I find something I like, I stick with it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that yesterday.
Yeah, I think.
How long has it been since you've been to Subway?
No, I'm back at Subway a little bit now.
Are you?
Yeah,
You're dating them again?
Well, for a while they did away with the roast beef, but so I tried their club without roast beef, and it was delicious.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they put bacon on it.
Even better.
Even better, yeah.
Yeah, so... Well, look, this week's episode is brought to you by none other than Native Nurseries.
A lot of cool stuff going on over there right now.
And it's been an odd year because, Dudley, I mean, you can speak to this, but a lot of stuff is sold out because of COVID. People are planting trees. And
I think everybody's working on their stuff, sounds like. So,
but there's still some pockets of trees that a guy can call.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of really good stuff available. So just call me.
Yeah.
And,
So if they go to the website and they think something's sold out, they could still call you and verify it.
Sure.
I don't know about all that.
Okay. Well, I hear you telling people that all the time on the phone.
Well, we'll try to find it. I mean, if you really got to find something.
Inventory is up to date on the website. One of the key things I try to tell folks is if it is sold out, there's a little box on that species page and that you can click on, and it'll email you as soon as it's back in stock.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
And it's important to understand, like, we have more trees than we're making available on the website, but we only make available on the website the first quality trees that are ready to ship at that time. So we do. That's why the email sign up is so important, because, as things come shippable and what we consider first quality is how we sleep this. Because it's not just like all the trees come in at one time and are perfectly ready to go. We're really spend a lot of time with selection and making sure that the trees that are available on the website are first quality and ready to go out the door. So just keep on checking back. Like Doug said, sign up for the email. He's getting ready the whole crew's getting ready. We put a new roof on the greenhouse last week.
That was fun.
That's always fun. You ought to see Dudley walking down a gutter 25 feet in the air.
So,
the man has got it. I wouldn't do it.
Cody Bennett just walks on it like he's on the ground. But, I'm like getting on my knees sometimes.
And I'm on the ground holding the ladder. But yeah, so they're going to, y'all start planting in the next month?
I bet
6 weeks?
Yeah, probably running soil now, if not next week.
Yeah, and those trees will be available. Some of those trees will become available this fall.
Yeah, our goal every year is to have a fully stocked inventory when we get back from the Labor Day holiday. Yeah. So early September is when we try to just completely fill the website with trees.
Well, it's a fascinating little aspect of how that business runs. And the nursery is just, it's the quality of the trees is just.
It's the only thing like it in the country.
It really is. So I would encourage guys that managing their property to go to Native Nurseries and check it out. And that feature that you mentioned is fantastic, because if you're wanting something, you just type in your information. It'll let you know when it's available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the best way to stay ahead of it. It really is.
Mm-hmm. NativeNurseries.com.
That's right.
Without an E, Nativ Nurseries.
Yeah, I love that. It really is. So thank you, Dudley. Thank you for explaining that. So
we appreciate you being here, Dudley.
I'm always glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, so today, here's what we got. 2 things we're going to accomplish today. Hopefully, we'll have the first podcast that's under an hour for us.
No, there's no way. We've already talked 30 minutes.
Well, I do want to try to do that.
It's just not going to happen.
So,
why do you want to keep them so short?
Well, I just want to experiment and see if more people would listen to a shorter one.
You're into this podcast.
Ours seem to be going long in my mind, but maybe not. So we're gonna. Do you remember yet last week we talked about this big deadhead that was found in Ohio?
Yeah, big giant in Ohio, and everybody flocked to claim him. I remember all that.
Yeah. So the young guy that found him, Mac, being the show runner that he is,
Mac in the house,
ran the guy down. And we're gonna talk to him.
So he's a deadhead,
bro.
What?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. What do you think? He found a deadhead.
Okay.
A deadhead?
I thought we were, Dudley was going to get reunited with some old tour buddies.
So you're referring to a dead deer's head.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
That's what was found. So,
Gotcha.
Mac, thank you, Mac, for running that guy down. We're going to have him. And then last week, we kind of started talking about supplemental feeding, and that kind of brings up a lot of questions.
That's right.
I thought we would talk pros and cons of that to kind of finish out the show.
It's a good subject to talk about. What to do it, when to do it, how to do it, the proper way to do it. And I think that's all up for discussion.
Right. So
I know you have an opinion, Bob.
I do have an opinion. And so, Mac, you're texting me, and I can't read my text. What are you trying to tell me over here?
He's got something to say.
Yeah, just that Jason Kline is in Sandusky County, Ohio, which is northwestern region of the state, and he's had this deer. He thinks he hunted him for 4 to 5 years, and when he found him, he was 8 years old, and so he had permission to hunt about a 7-acre piece of property, and this deer would slowly come on him every now and then, occasionally, and he had him in gun range at one point. Didn't have a good enough shot, from my understanding, but it'll be interesting to talk to Jason. He seems like a really good guy, and excited to hear from him.
Well, I know the internet lit up when a lot of people shared it, and a lot of people. Apparently, it's pretty famous deer.
Well known.
Well known. That's the
yeah.
best way to put it. It sounds like there's a lot of 7-acre tracks around there. Everybody's trying to get in on.
I mean,
Good grief.
we've all seen a lot of photos of big deer.
Yeah.
This one stands out for some
He's a
reason.
giant.
It's not the highest scoring deer ever, but in my mind, when I look at that photo, that is the biggest set of antlers I've ever seen in my life.
It's like the Hartford elk. Dun, dun, dun. We need one of those little. We need a trumpet. Please.
I mean, it's a typical.
There he is. When he comes out, when it does that, you know he's a shooter.
Yeah.
When those horns play.
I mean, it's really an 8-point with just little big stuff going everywhere.
He's a gigantic 8-point.
A gigantor deer.
So let's do this. Mac.
He's just an 8, Bobby.
Everybody's
Where's
loving-
Hercules?
Hercules is still at the taxidermist, but he is ready.
I thought he was moving in.
Well, I'm gonna go get him at some point.
I need to send a check with you.
Well, I've got to come up with some money myself. Get him out of hock.
Yeah. These house projects get away. This taxidermy projects, don't they?
Yes, I probably shouldn't have said that on the whatever we're on. My wife might be listening.
Yeah, you're gonna have to flip some cushions over.
I tell you what,
Don't worry, your wife's not listening to this.
I've spent more on taxidermy through the years than I care to. But I love it. I think when you kill a big deer, that's just what you're supposed to do with him.
Man,
Give him honor.
You know, you love being outside, and it's cool. You know, growing up, laying on my dad's couch, there's an elk and mule deer, and I think I was like in the Jungle Book when I go in his den and stuff. So, and obviously this place is full of it. So,
It is. So, Mac, why don't you? I didn't mean to scare you, Mac. You jumped there. Why don't you read a commercial, and then Jason and I will work on getting.
I like Mac's commercials because we can stop him in the middle of it and talk about what he's talking about.
Yeah, we can.
Y'all might like it.
What do we got a commercial coming?
Yeah, so last week we talked about Clover Plus and non-tip for our northern guys, and this week we're going to talk about spring protein peas for our southerners as well as our northern Midwest guys. 34 pounds plants an acre. They go really well in all types of soil, even in lower pH and less fertile ground. They're super tolerable to heat and humidity, which is really good. You can plant them in a little smaller of an acre than you can your traditional ag crop. So I think that makes it
I think it's a little
good.
bit easier than soybeans. This is a great alternative to people that want to get a high protein source out in the field. And soybeans are intimidating. I mean, for me, So I know we've got some great soybean products, but for the guy getting started out wanting to get his first spring food plot going, I mean, this is
Can't beat it.
You can't beat it.
Yeah.
You just can't beat it.
And especially if you've got
Easy to grow.
What's really good with these, if you're like in the deep south and you've got pine plantations with a narrow plot on a loading deck or something like that, these protein peas are perfect for that.
Yeah, get them on in there. I mean, because we all know that more high protein food sources out there, the more these whitetails are going to express their genetic potential.
Yeah, and I like peas. They have kind of a more primitive background than soybeans, and so they a lot of them are from Africa and places like that, and they can tolerate more stress.
How long we had these things out? A couple of years now?
Yeah, I think this will be the 4th year.
Oh, excuse me. Man, time goes fast.
It flies
when you're game
by.
keeping.
Unless you're doing time is what I've been heard.
No,
what I've been told lately.
We know
Time
you've never
flies
done
unless
any
you're
time.
I used to have to stay after school. So.
Yeah.
Another good thing about them is
Oh, sorry, Mac. We broke up his commercial again.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Mac.
Oh, another. What were we talking about?
I like it. Another one of the benefits to it is you can use a grass-specific herbicide. And so
Spray them.
we
Keep
know
them
in the
weeds
South,
out.
Absolutely. I mean, we fight a bunch of weeds, and to have a good food plot, you gotta spray them and have a good herbicide to put on there. And those iron and clay peas, I mean, do really well, and they jump, and it keeps your deer hitting your food plots, in your spring and summer months, and keeps them fed, especially when their antler growth is really important.
Cool.
And I'd like to add it fixes nitrogen for your next crop.
Legume.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Legume.
There you go.
Man, we're just messing Mac's commercial up.
That's all I got.
Yeah, well, you did well.
I love peas.
Is your mother? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
All right, go ahead.
No, you
what
go ahead.
you were talking about his mama. I want to
Yeah.
hear what you had to say.
Well, is your mother listening to the podcast?
She is.
Would you say hello to her, please?
Hey, Mama.
All right.
Oh, that's
There we go.
awesome.
You got to take care of your mama.
You sure do.
All right. Well, before we get him, did you have something you wanted to add to the conversation?
Nah, just
forgot it already.
Yeah, something about peas and legumes and.
Yeah. All right.
There's a canned bean at the store, It's these little bitty peas, little canned red peas at the store that has the green beans in there.
Yeah.
Those are iron and clay peas.
I thought they were little miniature black-eyed peas, but that's what they are. I've eaten a lot of those.
They're cow peas. They're the same genus and species, but that is specifically iron and clay peas.
Plant protein's good for you.
Yeah, it is. All right, so why don't we move off of this and let's get Jason on the phone and see if we can talk to him a little bit.
Talking to the Deadhead, bro.
Yeah.
All
right. Who's got the number?
Are you connected?
Huh?
To Colin?
Huh?
Are you
I got
you know, while we're doing this, I wanted to ask you guys, who are y'all rooting for in the Super Bowl?
What's the Super Bowl?
It's Tampa Bay and somebody.
I thought it was turkey season, not football season coming up.
You know, whenever Lanny calls somebody for the show, somebody always calls him, and I always assumed it was your bookie calling. But the fact that you don't know who's in the Super Bowl tells me it's probably isn't your bookie calling.
Yeah, you know, not. I'm not real good at the team sports thing. I guess is the best way to put it. But I do keep up with a little bit. You know. So who do you think's going to win, Bobby? Who are you rooting for in the big game?
I'm kind of pulling for Tampa Bay and Brady. You know, he's an older kind of guy. I have a lot in common with Brady.
That's what it was.
He eats at Hardee's a lot.
Yeah. I know he loves a cheeseburger with no cheese.
Oh man. No, man. Well, let's get Jason on the phone.
Okay, let me see if I can work my phone here and we'll get it.
Well, man.
Here we go. Jason's his name?
Yeah. Well, Mike,
Hello.
you had Jason?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good. This is Bobby Cole and Lanny Wallace.
What up, Jason?
Doing good, man.
Yeah. And we've got Mac. I think you've talked to Mac and Jason Cleveland's here. So we're with the Gamekeepers, Mossy Oak Gamekeepers. We've got a magazine, a TV show, and we just love whitetail deer.
We like him deer.
And we started hearing about your story a couple of weeks ago, and we were kind of fascinated by it. And luckily Mac chased you down, and Mac may have spawned a new career for himself by being able to run you down like this. But we just wanted to ask you a few questions, get you to tell your story about your deer.
About what's his name?
Okay, man.
I'm sure you hadn't told this story many times yet.
Herman.
Right. Yeah, plenty of times for sure.
Are we going? We're gonna go roll right into it.
Yeah, well, I guess so. What's the easiest way to do it? So let me introduce you a little bit first, Jason. Forgive me for not doing this, but it's Jason Kline, right? And you're from Sandusky, Ohio?
Sandusky County, Ohio, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know where that is. I know where Ohio is.
And Chris Paradise lives up there.
Yeah, Paradise is
Yeah, it's in Northwest Ohio. The closest, I guess, fairly sized town is Fremont, Ohio would be where I'm at.
Oh, yeah, Fremont. Yeah, I know right where that is. So Chris is on the northeast side of the state, though, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He's right outside of Akron. Is that right? No,
Cleveland. We flew into Cleveland.
We flew over that big lake. What's it called?
Yeah.
Lake Superior?
Lake Erie.
Erie.
Yeah. We flew right over that and landed right there by the side of the lake. That was pretty neat. We're getting off subject here, Jason.
We tend to do that, Jason. I don't know.
That's all right.
Yeah, so look, you obviously you had some history with this deer. Could you kind of tell the story?
Right. So, I mean, this deer obviously lived on this property that doesn't allow hunting. However, I'm allowed to hunt a small portion of a different property that borders it. So I been aware of this deer he was a huge typical at 4 years old, like just monster mainframe, 9-point typical for quite a few years. And then we figure on about his 7th and 8th years when he threw the drop tines and the kickers and the flyers, and he turned into the crazy deer that we have now. Obviously I hunted him, as hard as I could. I mean, you always wish you would have tried harder or done this or done that now that he's no longer with us. But, last year I came real close last year. I bought some cell cameras last year to put up essentially for that deer. And, I had it set to send me pictures to my phone every day at 2:00 when I got off work. And the second day of gun season, my phone goes off and I check my pictures, and he had been in the area of my tree stand like 3 times that day. He was following a little doe around is what he was doing. And I was like, the last time he was there was 1:00. And I'm like, holy smokes, like he's right there, so ran home quick, grabbed all my stuff, got out to the woods. And I told myself, man, I better be careful walking in here because he's right here somewhere. He didn't go far. And I go around this corner, this ravine, and there he was standing about 80, 90 yards away in the woods, just broadside staring at me. Obviously kind of caught me off guard. And I couldn't shoot him because there were some trees and stuff in the way. I didn't want to wound him. And he was standing I couldn't tell if he was on my property, the neighbor's property line. There's no fence that runs through the woods there, and it's all broken down on the ground. You can't really see it. And I couldn't tell if he's on my side of the fence, the other side of the fence. I didn't have a real good shot. I didn't want to wound him. So we had this little standoff, which what seemed like forever. And then eventually he just turned and trotted up the hill away. And that was the only time that I think I actually saw him physically hunting. I mean, I had trail cam pictures of him different times, even during the daytime. He just would be there and I wouldn't be there. So last year was a bit frustrating, obviously, with being so close to getting a shot at him and I couldn't. So that was frustrating. And then this year rolled around and he was just as big, if not bigger. And then about middle of October-ish, late October-ish, there's obviously several of us hunting him, and then everybody was watching him from the road. He was very visible. You could see him, most evenings if you drove around the block, you'd see him out in this big field. And he just kind of disappeared the middle of October, and we all got super concerned because he was really visible. Like you would see him almost every day if you went looking for him. And when he just disappeared like that and didn't show up for like 3 or 4 days, we kind of all knew that something was bad. So we think he disappeared and probably died sometime there, probably before November 1st is what we figure. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is wild. So you think the deer is 9 years old?
He's at least 8. From what we can tell from trail cam pictures and watching him and everybody talking, we all agree that he's at least 8 years old, probably older. I did send his teeth out to a lab in Montana, but I won't have that back for a couple months yet to
What's that called?
find out exactly how old he is.
Kind of carbon process.
That's the
cementum aging, I think is what they call it. Yeah.
So you've got sheds from him for the last couple of years too, don't you?
So I have the sheds from 2 years ago when he was a big frame typical. He was like 190 inch-ish deer that year. Based on it's a 9 point typical shed, and I did my best to figure out the spread and everything. But he was easily in the 190s, and then
as a 9 point?
As a 9 point. Last year he threw double drop tines and a flyer off the one side. And the neighbor kid lives across the road, actually found those sheds across the road. And him and I have a cool little relationship. Like we compared the shed antlers and we've taken pictures with them together. But those sheds were in the 200s with the drop tines and the flyers and all that. And then this year, obviously, I found him dead. And I had a Boone and Crockett scorer come and he was 241 with everything he had this year.
Wow.
So,
and was he dead on the 7 acres you have permission to be on?
Yeah, so the big property that I cannot hunt, the farmer has always allowed me to go look for shed antlers. We've always had that relationship for a long time. So when I was done hunting this year and, last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, I forget now, but time's been kind of crazy lately. I told, I'm like, I'm going to go start looking for shed antlers. I don't usually look this soon, but I had a feeling that deer was dead. I kind of had a feeling where I thought I would find him because I've shed hunted that woods all these years. And I'm like, man, where would a big deer go to die? Like if this deer is dead, where's he at? And I figured he'd be back in this creek bottom. It's kind of secluded and thick. And I found him within 30 seconds of looking for him. I mean, he was literally right where I thought he was going to be. Yeah.
That had to tear you up.
Yeah. To have so much history with something like that. And then your intuition kicked in and you just walked right to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was weird. I just come up over the hill and I could see, I saw a set of antlers there and I'm like, holy crap, like that's him. Like it just took me totally off guard because I found him so easily.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stood there and walked around and I took some pictures and video because I knew I was going to have to call the Division of Wildlife. And, it was a big deer with a lot of history and stuff. So I knew they were going to have to come out. So I took pictures and videos of everything, and waited for them to get out there before I, moved anything or touched anything.
That's pretty serious. We'd have messed up. We'd have towed him in the truck. Look.
Yeah.
So does that area right there, does it have a history of producing really big deer and does it drop tines and that sort of thing? Or was he a freak?
Yeah.
He was kind of a freak. I grew up there, so I've been around that woods for a long time. And talking to the farmer that owns the property, there's never been a deer like that. There's been a couple of deer that have had a drop tine, but nothing like that. Typically, that property holds big, humongous, giant, like typicals. Big 8 points is kind of like the thing out there. I would say that's the genetics. There's the big typical. So why he went all crazy, I don't really know. But if you look at the score sheet and you figure out the 8-point frame, he was 188 inches. It's just an 8-point. So
that's what's so striking to him about what Dudley was saying earlier. It's just what's so striking about him.
Yeah.
I mean, a daggum 9-point is 200 freaking inches. I mean,
He may not be the highest scoring deer, but to me,
Most impressive.
like visually, the most impressive buck I've ever seen.
It's like when he walks out, those horns play. You know what I mean?
So are you seeing any? Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, he's. I guess the thing that's really cool about that deer is like it literally has everything. He has width, he has mass, he has tine length, he's got a huge frame, he's got drop tines, he's got kickers, he's got flyers, he's got circumference. I mean, like everything you could possibly want in one deer rack. Like this deer has it. That's what makes him so cool.
Yeah.
So are you seeing any younger deer that are coming along?
Yeah,
that
we hope
have
he
any
has some babies.
characteristics?
Yeah.
I do have a shed antler from previously, probably 7-8 years ago, that does have a fairly decent drop time coming off the 1G2, just like this deer does. I haven't seen anything, since I've seen him, anything similar at all yet. But I'm sure, he lived back there his whole life, so the genetics are there somewhere. I have to wait to see if they pop out.
Is there the farmers? What's he farming? Was it soybeans, corn? I mean, it's in my mind when I see this is a giant ag field. I don't know if it is or not, but that's what it looks like in my mind.
Yeah, up here in Northwest Ohio, it's like small square blocks of woods, and it's mostly corn and beans. It's probably 75% fields, 25% wood. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he's got a smorgasbord, and he's got everything he needs to grow humongous.
So you were seeing him in soybeans in the summertime, and that's where he was so visible, I would guess. So if he was that visible, it had to be driving people crazy in that part of the world. Were y'all having were people
riding by?
People
I know it would
poaching or trying to slip in? Was that kind of stuff going on?
Not too bad. I think, the block is really big. So when he was out in the fields, most of the time he was far enough away for the most part to be safe. And I think the deer became so popular and so unique that he almost became unpoachable, if that makes any sense, because nobody could have shot him and tried to play it off that they shot him somewhere else or they had permission or whatever. So his fame of being visible to everyone, that everyone knew him, it kind of in a way protected him, because I think people knew, like, what am I going to do with this thing? And if I did shoot it, I couldn't, I couldn't play it off that I actually killed this thing legally. So yeah, he was kind of protected by his own fame, if that kind of makes any sense. But it did drive people nuts. They would drive around the block and they'd be like, how has no one killed this deer? This deer's out in this field, every single day, and he's humongous. Like, how has no one killed him? I'm like, oh, he's just safe where he's at. He's
in the right spot. That's right.
Right.
Such a neat
and
story.
he just kind of, I don't know why he got that attitude. Like, as a typical, I would see him every once in a while, but when he got the last 2 years, he was like, I don't care. I'm going to stand out here in the middle of this field all day for everybody to see. It was just kind of his attitude.
Look at this drop time. I got to show this thing off.
Well, Jason, one of the guys that works here at our company, he doesn't actually, he works for Moss Yoke, has a long time. He lives in Ohio. And when I asked him, I said, hey, have you heard about it? He knew all about it. Yeah. And he had actually seen the deer
on the hoof.
Yeah, he told me. I think so. He was one of the guys that parked on the side of the road
down the road, checking him out.
So it was on the way to his duck club, I think was the story.
Okay.
But he said the road would be just lined with trucks and guys just lusting on this deer.
Yeah, it was. He stayed fairly hidden until last year. The problem was we had a really bad spring, and the farmer didn't get a lot of crops in. So usually there's a lot of standing corn, which kind of blocks a lot of the visibility. But last year there wasn't many. I don't know if there's any corn up last year at all that actually made it up. So he was just super visible, and there's a state route that runs, right by there. So, he kind of became out for everybody to see.
How big is the farm that doesn't get hunted?
It's hundreds of acres. I couldn't tell you between the fields and the woods and all that. It's probably he probably stayed in about a 2 to 3 mile by 2 to 3 mile block area, I guess, the roads that run around it. He would go across the road from time to time. I mean, he definitely dodged a lot of cars and dodged a fair amount of hunters, over the last 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, I bet so. Wow. I love hearing like the ranges and how far they go and what his sanctuary was. Cause I mean, he obviously, we'll talk about sanctuaries at some point on the podcast, but he had one, that's how he got that big. Knew it, and he knew it. Yeah. He's smart enough to know.
It's just fascinating that he defied the odds and made it to this age.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's just a cool story.
It's a great story. Yeah. Great deer. Yeah. Unbelievable deer.
Well, Jason, thank you for being on. Is there anything we're missing that you'd like to add that's interesting about this deer?
Not necessarily. I would encourage people to check out the Outdoor Life article that was written about a week or so back. It was really good. It kind of explains the whole story and a little more, a lot more detail. And they did a really good job with that. So that would probably answer any questions that anybody had.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, that sounds good. Lanny, it looks like you've got a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you needed a partner on that 7 acres. I've got some time coming up. Look, I could work out something. I've got a good flathead fishing spot down here. We could work something out.
And that was part of the frustrating part was I only had this little acreage to work with. I couldn't make a move on him. I couldn't really do a whole lot, and that was frustrating. So
I bet so.
I could kill this deer if I could just get to him. So,
like I said, the invitation's always open if you need a partner up there, buddy.
I wouldn't do it, Jason. Speaking from experience, I would not do that.
Right.
So, well, look, we appreciate you being on, Jason, and Mac will be back in touch. We're going to send you a little care package for taking time to be with us today.
Take care of them, folks.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
All right,
thanks
buddy.
for being on with us, man.
Thanks so much,
And congratulations.
Jason.
I mean, I hate to say congratulate, but I mean, it's like that's a deer of a lifetime, no matter how you put your hands on it. So it's really cool to have. One of my most prized possessions is a set of shed antlers, and it's just as important to me. So congratulations.
Hey, I was just glad we were able to at least find him at some point. He just didn't disappear into oblivion.
And honor him is the best way to put it. I know we were talking about that earlier.
What a story it would have been if he'd have just disappeared, because it would have been a legend.
He'd have been the ghost. That's right. The monarch.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, for sure.
Well, he still
There's
is.
probably a lot of rumors.
That's the biggest
already
daggum
around
8-point I've ever seen. That's for sure.
All right, man. Well, you take care up there, and if you get another big deer, we'd love to talk to you about him. So maybe in the future we can have you back on.
Okay, I'd appreciate it. That'd be great.
Have a great day, Jason. Thanks buddy.
You guys too. Thank you.
Bye.
Wow.
A 200-inch 8, 9, whatever it is. That's just crazy. It's a big deer.
And like you said, he didn't kill that deer.
No.
But you still congratulated him.
Yeah, he had a personal relationship with it.
It's an awesome story. It's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask y'all this, because I know what my answer would have been. Had you had him at 80 or 90 yards and he may or may not have been on your side of the fence, you couldn't tell, what would you have done?
It's so funny. I was going to bring that up about the fence. It just seems like those big deer are always in those, they just have this magical sense and force about them. So I know you'd have shot at him.
I don't think you can say what you would do unless you were in the situation. I've watched deer walk away, and then 2 seconds later, I'm like, what was I thinking? Why wasn't I shooting?
Sure. But the fact that he didn't shoot because he wasn't sure if he was on the.
Well, look, and you've had those. You walk around the corner and you have a standoff with a deer. This deer obviously saw him, and they were looking at each other. So that is a low percentage shot, no matter where you are. If you're even with a gun, you're at the side and there's a deer, and y'all having the eyeball stare contest, and you go to move and he goes to move. That's a tough shot. So now
No, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about. He said he didn't. In my mind's eye, I heard him say, "I didn't shoot because I wasn't sure if he was on my side of the fence." Or
he said there was some woods in the way and he didn't have a good shot. It's probably one of those things where he's probably thinks he had a shot and maybe he didn't. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But,
it sounds like he made the right decision.
He made the right decision, I think, 100%. If there's ever, I'm trying to tell that to Hayden, if there's ever a question about being uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, whether anything about it, you don't do it.
That's right.
I mean,
that's exactly right. It's a good point.
You just don't do it.
Lesson by Lanny.
Well, I don't know about that, but you just don't do it. And it's an honor. It's an honor for the tradition. It's an honor for the sport, and it's an honor for the animal.
Yeah, it is.
And the landowners. You're right. It's always funny. We talk about it all the time. It seems like I'm always on the fence somewhere, but. You got to be real conscious of that. So,
yeah. Well, that was interesting, Mac. Thank you for getting him. And before we move on a little bit further, we didn't talk about blood on the biologic. There were quite a few deer, and I'm going to start off.
There's a little hair on the biologic too.
Yeah.
Do tell.
Yeah. Well, please do tell.
Well, we'll get in that after the blood. You don't go to success.
Well, yeah. Well, on the blood side, the warehouse.
On the board, huh? Charlie boy.
I think it was a 10-point, if I'm not mistaken. But
well, good for him.
Yeah, it was a great deer. And then you've heard me talk about Jay Collett through the years.
Yeah. One of your buddies from Montgomery.
His son Hall killed his first buck this past week.
Nice.
So it was a really cool hunt for them. And then my nephew Cole Spigner, you remember me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He had a pretty interesting story. He had his two sons, Hudson killed a deer a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We talked about it. Well, they were all in the shooting house and hoping to get Hudson another deer. It got too dark to see to shoot for Hudson.
Right.
You know? And Hudson had been wanting to blow the grunt call all afternoon, and Cole wouldn't let him. So Cole said, while he was packing up all the stuff, he said, go ahead and blow the grunt call. So Hudson starts blowing it, and Cole looks up, and this buck comes running out of the woods. Well,
it worked.
So he ends up shooting a deer. Yeah. Hudson gets a little upset with him.
Yeah, I bet so. Dad, what's up?
Yeah. So,
must have been a good one.
Yeah, it was a good one. So I was proud of him. That was awesome.
Well, he can say he called his dad in a deer.
Yeah, I think that's what Hudson said.
Yeah.
He called him.
So, I don't think Hayden would be that nice. He'd be like, you shot my deer, Dad.
Yeah. Well, it made me think of you because he's got another son named Hayes.
Yeah.
And he was in the blind. So he's like, Hayes, put your fingers in your ears. And Hayes was like, why? And so he was having to do all this, to try to shoot right at dark. But
sounds like turkey hunting with Hayden.
But then I'd also, speaking of while we're in Ohio, I was on a Zoom call yesterday and saw that Dave, Nebraska had killed a really big deer.
Did he?
In Ohio. But what was more impressive, he was holding up some sheds from a deer he just found, I think, this past week that was as impressive a set of antlers as you'll ever see. It was a set of sheds.
Old Dave up there in the honey hole.
He doesn't talk about that much.
No, he doesn't.
Maybe he's being a little low key and we need to.
He's actually very low key about that, I imagine.
Yeah, but it was a heck of a deer.
Maybe
it's a different animal up there. I mean, you've heard me say that before. Golly, they just get big up there.
I think it can be a little more competitive up there too.
Yeah.
Smaller tracks, a lot of people.
Yeah, just like our buddy Jason that we just talked to.
Mm-hmm.
More visible.
Yeah, you can't. I mean,
you can't drive around in the South and just see a bunch of deer.
You can't see 100 yards unless it's a clear cut or a big field. And we always say this. A giant deer in a field next to a state highway in the South. I think they shoot shotguns in Ohio. Somebody would have broke out the big 50 cal or something down here.
He was talking about the deer was too popular to be able to be poached.
Yeah.
Down here, somebody would have taken it.
Yeah, somebody would have tried. No, I killed him over yonder.
Send it.
Yeah.
It
would have got tried. Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind.
And they'd have come up with some really off-the-wall story about where they killed it. Lord have mercy.
God bless the South. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good. Blood on a little hair on the biologic.
Yeah, who was that?
Our own Chef Vandy Stubbs.
That's right.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think he got a little blood on the biologic, but he just didn't.
I think he's had that a couple times. Yeah.
What do you think's going on? As someone who shoots a lot and understands, wounding animals.
I brought him back. I brought it back to the house. That's the difference, Mine is in the freezer. Yeah. It might have took 7 times.
Yeah.
But
what do you think Vandy's doing? Is there anything we can help him with?
I think he already knows what he did wrong.
Yeah.
In case you noticed, he pulled out that old rusty 270. He's been shooting that 300 blackout with the subsonic ammo.
Mm.
And
I think it came back to bite him.
He needs to get that old Browning out.
Yeah. And then he missed one with a bow too.
Did he really?
Oh yeah. He ain't been talking much, you notice.
Huh.
But he, the good thing is we do have a little redemption. Dudley, you and I and Bobby, we all have a chance. We got 10 days left in Alabama.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's even 10 days.
Is it in on the 10th?
It does.
So winding on down in the South.
Yeah, it is.
I love it. And I like to see it. I love to see it open, and I love the whole process. But when it closes, man, it's like my mind just catches another
shifts.
gear. Yeah, it just completely shifts.
So I'm going to shift your minds a little bit. But while you're here at this juncture where we are, the early part of February, Mother Nature is one tough mother.
No question.
Right now. So, I mean, what I'm seeing in the woods, these deer are hungry.
Absolutely.
And they're slaves to their stomachs right now. They're trying to find the acorns, Dudley. A lot of them are gone, especially if you got pigs.
If you got pigs, all your acorns are gone.
So this is the time of year as a gamekeeper that you need to have been planning for, so that you could have tried to have some groceries out there in the field, like winter bulbs and sugar beets. You might still have the bulbs left, which are great sources of carbs. But I tell you what, it kind of breaks my heart to think about. I mean, this time of year, we know how it is here, but you think about up north in Minnesota, and those places.
And there's actually a little bit of green stuff around here, but they're just eating buds and sticks and stuff. But yeah, up there where this big deer, where Jason went, there's nothing up there right now.
It's amazing that they can.
And the more we learn about these animals, the more we know that consistent, food source throughout the year is even if they're not growing antlers, it's what's going to make their fawning better, make everything better, and help them express their true potential. So, I think it's a very important part. I noticed last week you've really stepped up your supplemental feeding game.
Yeah, well, I wanted to. We talked about it a little bit. My intention was to just have an all-you-can-eat kind of scenario.
Yeah,
and just try to help them because the couple of places that I have to hunt, there's no ag around them really.
No, they're in. You're down in the bottom.
Yeah, and so you can talk to 10 different biologists and get 10 different opinions about supplemental feeding, but I kind of feel like it's my personal feeling is I think it can help. And I don't think that I'm gonna greatly enhance or influence antler growth, but I do feel like I can help keep those animals healthy through these stressful periods.
It's gotta be benefit overall herd health, and overall herd health is going to result in bigger deer in the long term scenario. So it's a great thing to do, in my opinion. How do you prefer to do it? Now, I guess we should preface this by every state has very specific laws on how you can and when you can. And everything else, I guess, depending on the species and the time of year.
Yeah, and there's so many issues around this. I mean, CWD is an issue.
No doubt.
You got to think about
communal feeding.
So you've got to try to do this in a way that you don't want the feed to mold on the ground,
right?
Because you can end up creating an unhealthy situation. Some of the troughs that are out there, you can. My understanding is the best way to do that would be to get on a schedule where you're actually disinfecting that trough,
cleaning the trough
every month or so. So
yeah.
I see a lot of guys do supplemental feed with troughs. This new Texas Trophy protein feeder that I got.
How much feed does that thing hold?
It holds 1,200 pounds. And like I didn't have enough money to fill it up.
Yeah. You can only afford to feed her.
I got about a third full, so I hope they don't eat too much in a hurry.
And it's a gravity type feeder.
It's a gravity with these tubes that come down. So there's probably a chance it's. It's not that much different than a trough, but it
just seems less sloppy
is.
though. It would seem like it would be.
So I think somebody's thought this one through. I was real impressed with that feeder once I assembled it and got all the tubes assembled, and it's just how durable it was and how easy it would be for them to feed out of it.
Right.
So
do you think that's the healthiest option you have? Say there was no laws and regulations on how you could feed. Would you change what you were doing?
I don't think so. I think that's how
I
would
think
do
that's the right way to do it.
I think that's right. Through a gravity-fed tube protein fed, to gravity-fed feeder.
Yeah. The main thing is I would encourage people not to put it on the ground.
Right. At all.
Yeah. And there's corn you can buy that's alpha toxin free.
Right.
You just need to be smart about some of those kind of things.
Be sure you're feeding a quality.
Because Dudley, we've had these conversations as well. Is feeding turkeys trying to hold turkeys in an area is that a good or a bad thing? And you could be creating a scenario where the predators in that area learn, well, okay, every morning they're going to be right here.
Right here.
I'd love to see more targeted studies done on those types of scenarios.
And I kind of think, the way they do it in Texas is a pretty good way to do it. I know, everybody that's been hunting in Texas is wondering they turn the feeder on the front of the truck when they're driving to the stand. But you think about scattering that feed. I know it's on the ground, but scattering that feed out over a large area would seem to be a less likely chance of them, being able to transmit communal diseases that way.
And Texas is a little different because it's so arid.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have the humidity issues that we might.
So your biggest fear with hitting the ground is it molding.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And it will around here if you're not careful.
Everything molds around here. A little humid from time to time.
So Dudley, down at your farm, have you done any supplemental feeding?
Well, honestly, it's a bigger piece of property than my budget handles. So I've got a couple of buddies that hunt with me. My kind of rule is let's plug all the lowest holes in the buckets first before we do any supplemental feeding. It is an extra expense. So we do the food plots, we do the burning, we're shooting does, doing some stuff in our cutting down trees, creating little mini cutovers and, weeds for them to eat on. And then when you can get that accomplished, I think that's when you can add the feeding to your program.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say it. There's folks out there that aren't doing the habitat work, and then they're spending extra money on feed when
they should be putting it into the dirt.
They should be putting it into, fertilizer, clover seed, doing some hack and squirt, doing some fires. And then when you get to that point, then the next logical step is to consider supplementation. Mm-hmm. So we do a little bit of it. I'd like to do more. It's just a bigger piece of property, and it's harder to have all of that feed in different areas.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go fill the feeders up. That is,
but
that's a chore.
Like where you are at the Ponderosa, it's just a perfect scenario. It's a perfect scenario. You go out there 2 or 3 times a week. You can put some feed in your feeder. You've got that awesome food plot you created this year. You're doing your habitat work, killing your kudzu.
So I'm hoping with the size of this protein feeder, I don't have to fill it every weekend.
God, you got some hungry deer if you do.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to, your doe harvest, all of that stuff comes into play, and you can manage that.
I think one of the things too is, I don't know this, I've always assumed this, one of the most important times to feed is when it's after deer season, this time of year where everybody wants to feed, during the season when the hunting opportunity is around. So I would say, to your point, now is the time to do it. You need to have the habitat work in place for the hunting season. And then, really, I think you can have a more positive effect with supplemental feeding starting this time of year throughout the next couple months than you could, feeding in October.
So I'll add to my comment. A lot of people may lease land, and they're not allowed to do some of the habitat improvements they want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's where you can really help your herd by supplemental feeding. If you're not allowed to, hey, we need to thin these pines. Well, they won't let us.
Right.
So,
I think that, here in where we live in the Deep South, that's the supplemental feeding is going to make sense in January, February, and March till it starts greening up. And I fully expect when it starts greening up for those deer to leave that supplement.
Yeah, they will.
They will.
But then I expect that they'll come back to it probably in the latter part of the summer when everything is kind of dry and rank and woody. Mm-hmm. So they'll probably need it again then.
Yep.
So
up north, you need to feed longer probably because I know they have a bigger effect of winter kill. I'm sure supplemental feeding helps winter kill.
You would think, those deer up there yard up. But, one of the things that I think is critically important that if a guy up there starts a program that he stick with it and not just stop in the middle of it, because I think that could probably do more damage than good. So,
yeah. All right. So what's the recipe you think? I mean, what is best to feed? Is it a protein feed? Is it corn? Is it soybeans? I know Full Draw is a mix of corn and roasted soybeans and protein pellets. So is there certain levels of protein and certain stuff that you should look for in anything you feed?
Well, I'm thinking that BCP with the corn, beans, and the protein pellet is the perfect thing to start them on because I think it's going to take a little corn to get them started eating on it. And then those roasted soybeans are super nutritious. And then that protein pellet is in there. So I think they'll go to the corn and then they'll learn to eat the other.
So I guess
I get that nutrition.
When you're feeding what should be the minimum protein level?
I think 16, 17%.
17% is what you're looking for.
Right in there.
And then maybe some kind of vitamin package.
A lot of that's all built in these days.
Yeah, built into the pellet.
These protein feeds. I mean, they look at everything. It's really high tech. It'll have all the gut bacteria added in small amounts, so it can help with their rumen health. And
it's what's interesting about deer is unlike a cow, a deer he's just going to eat a little bit and then move on because he's balancing his diet around a bunch of different things. He's not just going to stand at that feeder and just eat a belly full.
And some individual deer will take to that feeder more. There's it's documented where Some deer won't even eat out of a feeder.
Right. That's right. And they say some bucks are just totally suspicious of them all of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. And like I said, when we started this, you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different opinions.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, just don't see how it can. I just feel like this time of year, it's got to help them.
Oh, absolutely.
If you do it right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't think anybody would argue that. So,
all right. Well, what about an Ask Dudley question? Do we have that thing keyed up and ready to go?
We do. We've got an Ask Dudley. It's from Josh McDowell in Southern Virginia. He's in planting zone 7. And the question is, it's going to be a few years before I'm ready to plant my native nursery trees in their permanent place. Should I go ahead and purchase them along with tubes and pot them up until I'm ready?
Good question, Josh. It was actually a little bit lengthier question that we narrowed down, kind of paraphrased it. But I get this question frequently, and I think it's very important. Our nursery, we've kind of got a little system, and we ship these smaller seedlings that are very shippable, but they're also very transplantable. But, your scenario where you're really not wanting to put them in the ground for a few years, I see your point. Normally, I try to tell folks to just go ahead and get them in the ground. When you're growing things in pots, you're adding risk. You're also having to plant a bigger tree, so it's not as efficient. You got to take more time to dig a bigger hole. You're likely to have to water it through the first summer at least when you're planting bigger trees. So there's pros and cons to both. If you do want to grow them in pots, native nurseries seedlings are a great place to start. In fact, we even have some nurseries buy seedlings from us to pot up to grow to resell. But, when you go to the beach for a week in the summer, you got to find somebody to water your seedlings. You've got to test your water to make sure the water doesn't have too much of things in there that can affect the growth. So there's a lot to it. Most of the time I'm going to say, just get our seedlings and put them straight in the ground. But in your scenario, if you want to pot them up and get bigger trees while you're waiting to find that dream property, go ahead and give me a call and I'll help you get started. Good question, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Know-It-All.
All right, guys. Well, what did we learn today? Is there anything else we can pull out of this?
I learned that there was a 240-inch freaking 9-point up in Ohio. That's mind-blowing to me.
It was a 9-point a couple years ago. I think it regressed to an 8.
Even better.
Yeah. So it measured 188 as an 8-point. That's ridiculous.
It really is. Yep.
It's going to make Hercules look small.
It really is. So let's get Mac. Let's get David McElwain to post a picture of Herman, this big buck, on our Instagram page so people can go see it if they hadn't already seen it.
I wonder if it's Herman Monster. I wonder if that's where you got that.
That's probably is.
That's probably it. I meant to ask him that.
So I've enjoyed it. Anything else we need to do?
Did we keep it under 45 minutes?
Well, we have kept it under. If we close within the next 30 seconds, we can make it out under an hour. So.
Well, let's wait. Just please, 30 more seconds. You don't have any country music, Hank Williams Jr. questions you can ask me?
I don't.
We'll go to that next week.
Yeah.
Well, let's get on out of here then.
All right. Well, Dudley.
Say bye, Dudley.
Bye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Cleve.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.